If you are looking for a solution to the bottom of your sourdough bread being burnt, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. When I started baking sourdough bread at home several years ago, my bread always came out looking beautiful, with nice rise and amazing taste with delicious sourdough flavor. However, the bottom crust of my sourdough bread was always very hard, very dark, and almost burnt. It had what I affectionately called the branding iron effect. Through trial and error, I solved the burnt bottom problem, and in this video, I'm going to share my method with you. In the beginning of the video, I'm going to fast forward through the initial steps of creating the dough, leading up to the baking of the dough. Okay then, let's get started. Here I am during the evening feeding my starter, which will sit on the kitchen counter overnight. And the next morning, mixing the dough. In this video, I'm going to skip over the folding of the dough during bulk fermentation, but on my YouTube channel, I have a separate video where I demonstrate stretch and fold and coil fold. After my dough has risen about 50% in volume, I divided the dough into two loaves, placed the dough in bannetons, covered with plastic shower caps, and put it in the fridge for cold fermentation to develop flavor, baking 1 to 3 days later. Today is the day for baking. After placing my Dutch oven in the kitchen oven, I preheat the oven at 450 degrees for at least 30 minutes. Here is a cold pizza stone I've placed in the oven immediately prior to baking my sourdough loaf. Here is the first loaf after baking with the lid on for 30 minutes at 450 degrees over a cold pizza stone. This is the same loaf after baking an additional 15 minutes at 400 degrees. And this is the golden brown bottom of the same loaf. This is an old picture showing two loaves sitting on the oven's wire rack. During the first 30 minutes of baking at 450 degrees, my sourdough bread sits in the Dutch oven with the lid on. After lowering the temperature to 400 degrees, I remove the sourdough bread from the Dutch oven and place it directly on the oven's wire rack for the last 15 minutes of baking. I do this so the bread is no longer sitting on the hot cast iron Dutch oven. Here you can see the faint dark lines created by the wire rack. Loaf number 2, which was also baked with the lid on for 30 minutes at 450 degrees, but without the cold pizza stone. This is loaf number 2 after 15 more minutes of baking at the reduced temperature of 400 degrees and on the kitchen oven rack. And here's the bottom of loaf number 2. Loaf number 1 on the left, which was baked over a cold pizza stone, is slightly lighter in color than loaf number 2 on the right, which was not baked over a cold pizza stone. For loaf number 3, I'm going to move the cold pizza stone closer to the bottom of the Dutch oven. This is loaf number 3, baked at 450 degrees with the lid on and the pizza stone closer to the bottom of the Dutch oven. And this is after 15 additional minutes at 400 degrees on the wire rack. And the bottom of loaf number 3. Loaf number 3 on the left, baked over a cold pizza stone, is quite a bit lighter than loaf number 2, which was not baked over a cold pizza stone. The use of a trivet will also reduce the burning of the bottom of the bread. Here is loaf number 4 after baking for 30 minutes in a preheated oven with a preheated Dutch oven at 450 degrees with the lid on, setting the bread on a trivet and with a cold pizza stone close under the Dutch oven. And after 15 additional minutes with the lid off at a reduced temperature of 400 degrees, leaving the bread in the Dutch oven sitting on the trivet. And the bottom of loaf number 4, which was baked for a total of 45 minutes in the Dutch oven, sitting on a trivet. Are you as shocked as I am that the bottom did not brown at all? I did check the internal temperature of loaf number 4, and it reached 204 degrees Fahrenheit. What did I learn from today's baking? In the past, I baked my bread in a Dutch oven with the lid on for the first 30 minutes, then removed the bread from the Dutch oven and placed it on the oven rack for the final 15 minutes at a reduced temperature. Today, as in the past, this method produces a beautiful, unburnt bottom crust. Using a trivet for the first time, I learned that a trivet definitely reduces a burnt bottom, perhaps too much reducing. To salvage today's loaf number 4 bake, I placed the bread in a skillet on the stove on low heat, and in 12 minutes I had a nice golden bottom crust. I'm out of dough today, so no more experimenting for now, but in the future, if I use a trivet during the first 30 minutes of baking with the lid on, I'll still remove the bread and sit it on the oven rack for the last 15 minutes of baking at a reduced temperature of 400 degrees. Thank you very much for watching this video, and make it a great day.